3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Welcome to the North Carolina Youth and Government YAGcast. We've got a special edition of our media podcast with another Alumni Spotlight interview. We're doing something new for our Youth and Government program. We're interviewing alumni to get a sense of what they did in the program, what they're up to today, and lessons they've learned along the way. My name is Megan Hoyt, but everyone in this program calls me Boz. And today I'm thrilled to be co-interviewing alongside Asmitha Vinukanda, the current Attorney General for our mock trial program. And we are excited to be in conversation with Lizzie Batman. Lizzie lives in Charlottesville, Virginia, and works as a talent acquisition specialist within the intelligence community. Lizzie graduated from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with a degree in political science before launching a successful career in recruiting. She uses the relationship building skills that she first cultivated in youth and government every day in her work. During her time in YAG, Lizzie served as the 2007 Youth Lieutenant Governor and attended the Conference on National Affairs. Lizzie, hello, welcome.
Hello, hello. So happy to be here.
We are happy to have you. One of the things that we love to start with is really just understanding like what it was like to be in the program when you were a delegate. But first, I actually want to zoom out and ask you about what it was like to be a high schooler during that time too. So just like broad stroke it for us, like how would you describe yourself during high school? Like what do you remember about that particular life chapter?
Oh, it was a time. I remember thinking everything was the biggest deal ever and the smallest deal ever. There was no in between. It was always like one or the other. Um, I remember feeling like I did not fit in. I'm sure every high schooler has had that before. And remember with youth and government in particular, I kind of found that place where I kind of clicked in. There were times I didn't feel like I had the group I was looking for that you saw on TV. I mean, of course, the OC was very popular. No one will understand this reference.
I get it. But we're peers, yes.
Groups and everything. And, this was something I kind of did on a whim my sophomore year. And then I was like, yeah, girl, we're going to do this.
Mhm.
And, but yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone has that feeling. And now that I'm older and I talk to more people about their high school experience, I feel like everyone's like, yeah, I did not fit in high school. I'm like, yes, you did.
But I love too hearing that you found your people, your group in youth and government. Do you have like your first memory of youth and government? I know you said sophomore year, but like is there a
Yes.
first or like really like what started you on your youth and government journey?
Um, I remember Napoleon Dynamite was a very big movie, and my friend Jenny and I wrote a bill about making that the state movie. I don't know why. It felt very funny, and it's still on brand for me, so that tracks. Um, but getting there and be like, I did not take this seriously enough.
Mm.
But I remember getting to Raleigh, and at that point we got to walk to different buildings, the Capitol building and all of that fun stuff and all the freedom we got. And I was like, what's happening? Like, I'm being treated like an adult.
Mm.
I really need to conduct myself as if I am one as well. So I remember that was kind of when it locked in place. When I was there, I had freedom, but like it was also making the choice to be where I said I was going to be and honor those commitments. And really, I just fell in love after that. I was like, oh, okay, these people are smart. They have a lot of great things to say. I also am chatty. Let's do this.
I feel like what you're saying is so common that you don't really understand it until you're there. And then once you're there, if you like it, if you stick with it, which a lot of folks do, it becomes like a bug that you've caught and you
Yes.
get really into it. And it's okay to get into it. It's okay to kind of be the government nerd or like into politics or
My parents were
something
like,
like that.
weird flex, but let's do this.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned that common experience of like not realizing how important YAG was to like to you and like to your high school experience until you actually went to conference. I'm a senior now, but my first 2 years, my freshman and sophomore year, we were virtual because of COVID. Like we didn't have an
Oh,
in-person conference experience. And so I went into this completely thinking like, oh, it's just gonna be a trial run. Nobody's gonna take it as seriously. It's just gonna be online. People aren't gonna be as like into it as they usually are, probably. And then I opened up that first Zoom call, and everybody was so passionate and so interested and like so involved. And I was just like, I really want to be a part of this. Like, I want to keep on doing this. This is the coolest thing I've ever done.
also on Zoom, like the technology is insane to me. Because we gave out stickers. I was like 2 years before people had to do videos with their campaign. So like we were like guerrilla campaigning up in there. Like, and I remember, also talking with the governor from the year before in NEMA and him being at the same school and being like, hey, listen, I'm really gonna need you to partner with this guy named Turner. He's not in our district, but he is very cool. And I think you two would kill it as like governor and lieutenant governor. So I went up to him and I was like, hello, Turner. My name is Lizzie. We're about to be besties. And I think we should just like kind of hang this whole trip. And it works out very nicely.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. Okay.
so many of the friendships you make in YAG are just like on the spot. Like you don't expect it to happen until it's already happened.
You're like, oh, did we just become best friends? Oh, great, great, great. Let's continue.
You mentioned we want to definitely ask about because I think running for office is a huge part or could be a huge part of someone's youth and government experience, but it can also be like a really intimidating part too. So I know you mentioned it seems like you kind of had a partner there in Turner who became we both became the governor and lieutenant governor, right? But we don't run on a ticket like that. And yeah,
No.
there are programs that do that,
Yeah.
but I know that there are those sorts of things that, students will sort of make alliances and try to get their delegation to know other delegations and stuff like that too, even today, of course. So, yeah, so just tell us what do you remember most about running for office? Like, what was that experience like for you?
I remember, first of all, while we were in high school, Mount Tabor had the biggest delegation. I don't believe that's the case anymore. Um, so everyone was like, oh, Tabor has a lock on this. Everyone's gonna get it. But with that, there were quite a few people who ran for lieutenant governor and governor within our delegation. And then we had to go to you know, I forgot what it's called. It's not regionals. Is it regionals? Because it feels very glee for me to say
Pre-conference, but
regionals.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know what I meant.
pre-conference. Hmm.
Pre-conference. I'm gonna call it regionals now because I find that hilarious. And having to get up in front of that because we had narrowed down at my school, but that did not mean that there weren't other people. So I gave speeches a lot of times. Um, but once I was kind of on that ticket, ready to go, really started thinking about campaigning. I made some stickers. It was like, you know, printing was super expensive. So I got the stickers. I went to Staples and then I colored flowers on it because getting the colored printer, my parents were like, listen, we love you. No, you're getting so many of these. Um, I also remember having a lot of trouble writing my speech. I was very nervous. I'm very good at the one on one, being like, hello, my name is Lizzie. This is why I want to run. I got some good ideas. I'm fun to be around. Let's do this thing. But, I had kind of like writer's block when it came to writing my speech. And I remember one of the people I actually ran against was very frustrated with me because I was on the bus, like kind of like going through, I had framework and I was like, but the speech ended up being great. I wrote down things and I could continue editing it as I was there as I heard from other people. Um, then I remember one of my questions because they would ask questions after the speeches about things was like, what would you like to create? And someone was like, oh, doing this like a baby. I was like, absolutely not. Like I am 17 or 16 or however old I was. I think I was 17. I was like, a way to have reusable energy. And I was like, I don't know what to do anymore. Like, we good. But I remember
That
that
I want
being,
to pause there because
yeah,
that is something that we don't do today. But I remember being a very nerve-wracking part was actually having to ask and like get
yes,
answered questions that you didn't know from the press, as a part of the speech. So students do campaign videos now, which is a huge hallmark of like,
yes.
kind of showcasing like a fun side of your campaign or your personality. But that I remember being really nerve-wracking.
That's the only question I remember getting asked. And I remember being like, what am I supposed to say in this situation? So that's interesting. But we also didn't have the videos. I'm going to be honest. Very glad I didn't have the video.
Sure. Mhm.
Hopefully that answered that question. I felt like that was kind of a giant ramble with me just.
No, it's helpful to hear like what it was like then and what it's like now. I think it makes students maybe be grateful for just having to make a video or something as opposed to answer, unprompted questions or something. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
insane.
Asmita, is there anything else you want to ask Lizzie about her time in the program?
Yeah, so I think that even though, the conference as a whole is just super fun and interesting, is there like a special memory that you still think about from conference?
There are so many of them. From really every year I was there. It's hard to narrow it down to one, but you know, the group I was serving with, I just remember us being super tight. I remember when I served, I cried a lot. Turner cried. Sorry, Turner, if you listen to this, and I'm outing you, but you did. We all did, and we also were so excited for the people who were joining us the next year. It's less like a special memory than a special feeling. And when I came back for the alumni event earlier this year, which is insane that it was earlier this year, but I digress. Um, the magic's still there, the feeling's still there, and it's one of those things where I felt special about everything, but also like I could come out and do something. I could impact my local government. I could impact my job. I could impact a lot of things because I saw how seriously the next generation is taking this and that while I still take it seriously, could step up a little bit. So it kind of gave me those feelings again of being able to do it. So
That is so special that seeing the youth of today, right, reminded you that of the motto, right, which I
yep,
love, that democracy must be learned by every generation. And I think I'm still learning it, right? Like, oh
oh
my gosh, am I practicing democratic values in my everyday life? Like, probably not, So I love that it kind of lit that fire in
yeah, and I
you
was like, oh hello,
years
we're back.
later.
Hello. It's been, I was
Yeah.
like doing the math on how many years it's been. I will not continue with that. But my children were like, oh, when were you in high school? I was like, I don't want to talk about this. I feel like you're bullying me right now.
Yeah. And thinking about, I mean, just like how impactful youth in government is, and then thinking about, I mean, what you do today, we'd love to kind of pivot a little bit and talk to you about, just how that journey has unfolded as well. So we want to learn a little bit about your job, for folks that don't know, like, what is recruiting? And I mean, tell us a
Yes.
little bit about what you do, but really like what's interesting to you about the work that you do.
Um, I'm a very people oriented person, and it helps that I'm in a form of people operations. My career started in sales, not my vibe, but it gave me, I have very little fear of a cold call. Um, and part of that was because youth in government, you know, the guerrilla marketing almost of yourself. I moved into campus recruiting. So my focus has always straddled the line between education and people. and how that can grow, because with education you are able to open the doors. It doesn't have to be college education, it could be a certificate, it could be this, it could be that, but it's a way for you to open your horizons. Was a campus recruiter for a while, have worked at some tech firms, worked at a university for almost 5 years, which I mean is a special place, but also sometimes very stressful and political. Learn how to navigate those politics pretty easily because of youth and government. And then I have been at a government contractor for the past almost 2 years. I'm a talent acquisition specialist, which is a fancy name for a recruiter. My job is to find people or reach out to people who have applied for jobs, whether it's interns or full-time hires. I screen them, so I have to have conversations and really pull things out of their background to figure out if, they have the technical chops we're looking for. They can handle the small talk of being an office assistant, which happens a lot where we are, sometimes from me. And, kind of using that, and also thinking of questions as I'm going. A lot of the skills I learned as I was listening, active listening, um, figuring out what motivates people when you're in debate, because you can see that within the first few things, and figuring out what motivates people for the conversation we're having with them, to get them through the process, but also the hands-on approach. Want to make sure that when I'm passing a candidate for a technical screen, that they know what the steps are, they have this planned out, and I can get them through to offer and show them that where we are is a great place to be. um I like being able to hang out with people, talk to people, be the point of entry for people at my organization. And I like that my organization is very mission focused, government focused. I didn't know that this was going to be the move for me, but for right now, it's excellent. We are a geospatial analysis, geospatial tracking. So think GIS, when you can look up, people's addresses and figure out where it is. That's very static. What we do is tracking. So a lot of machine learning, data science, et cetera, et cetera. So using that in ways where, we're helping the Japanese Coast Guard with their marine sanctuaries or something along those lines, and making sure bad actors are not getting away with their bad actions. So it's funny because you think government kind of is in all of it. It was in the education piece, because I think you're learning democracy. You need to continue being educated so you know that you're making informed decisions. And what I'm doing now, the networking, talking to people all the time, but also having that mission focus for the service of our country in some ways, or others that are working with us.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so interesting too to hear you say you work now for a government contractor, right?
Mhm.
So it's almost like government adjacent, if you will. You're not necessarily working for the government, but it is to ensure that, yeah, like the best outcomes are happening, right? Whether that's for
Exactly.
your client or for Japan, right?
Yeah, which is one that I'm
Whoever.
allowed to talk about. I'm not allowed to talk
Sure.
about most of what we do because, yes,
Sure.
the
Yeah.
government.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Um, I'm curious if there are, I know in recruiting, the relationship building aspect is really key. And I know you mentioned like running for office and like being really comfortable in that one-on-one space. I wonder if you could kind of connect those dots a little bit for us. Like how, like what do you think are the fundamentals, like the fundamental skills that students can really practice in youth and
Yes.
government that will serve them well, whether it's running for office or not, but
Oh,
just that
just
networking
in
piece at
general.
conference.
Yeah.
Like, what's the best networking advice at conference that you would give students today?
Number one, like, feel free to say, hey, I am so and so. I'm with this school. Where are you from? Um, a lot of people want other people to come up and talk to them. When you're standing with a group, make sure you have open body language. I know that's crazy, but for me, networking at networking events or when I have conversations like this or something, making sure I'm open, and I'm approachable, makes it easier because not everyone is an extrovert. If you're wondering, I am. I know it's shocking. Um, but one of my good friends at work and I laugh that I adopted her, an introvert, as my friend. Um, so if you have open body language, there are people who be like, "Hey, what's up?" and not be afraid to sit at a table with people you don't know. It's awkward to start with, but I crack a couple of jokes and then we're on our way. So holding a sense of humor, finding something that's in common, whether you both like the color pink, like, Barbie was a great movie, or you cheer for the Tar Heels, which obviously you should. Um, but finding that commonality, because everyone has more in common than they think. Finding that commonality and pulling that out is the way you're going to have those conversations, whether it's being elected or it's just trying to network and meet people across everything. Um, I talk to a lot of software engineers in my job. Software engineers are not the most extroverted people. Um, and not in a bad way. They just sometimes I'm like, y'all, we got this. So sometimes if I'm on a call, I'm like, hey, breathe. Like, I know you sound nervous. Like, or I will fumble in something I'm saying because they are so nervous in every answer. I'm like, oh, look at me go, like fumbling my words, like I get something backwards. And then they start opening up and feel more comfortable with me. So just reading the room, having that like empathy and emotional sensitivity to what's going on, not only would help you with everything, but it helps me as a recruiter have those conversations, make people feel comfortable and want to join my organization and want to have these conversations. So did that help? Did that answer? Yeah, okay, cool. So
Yeah, those are really good tips. I think just making it really practical
yeah.
for all of us, not just for students, for sure.
Yeah, I think about it a lot.
Um, I'm curious if I know you majored in political science at Chapel Hill. So I'm wondering if there's advice that you would give to students who are curious about like that major, or how you kind of pivoted from that major into like recruiting.
Yeah.
Like what advice would you give to students who are interested in what you've been talking about, or the college major process as well?
So I majored in political science. I minored in art history. Quite a combo. Quite a combo. It was a liberal arts school. I really enjoyed both. I went to school. I was like, I'm gonna be a lawyer. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna love it. I would have hated being a lawyer. Not that it's a bad profession. I just I get a lot of joy of talking through things out. And once I learned more about being a lawyer, there's a lot of reading and I love to read, but we're not talking fourth wing here. We're talking amicus briefs. Um, so uh, I still really enjoyed political science. It's one of the shorter major classes you can or majors you can do in college. At Carolina, the number of hours you need not as big as some of the other majors. So I had a lot of freedom to take a lot of classes and learn. I'm not saying political science is easy. It is not. It is not an easy major, but you do have the opportunity to kind of expand or double major. I think it's a great major to have if you want to double major, and you can really tailor it based on your interests. Because I mean, I took a Soviet, post-Soviet politics class. That was intense, but I learned so much in it. And then I took two American or North Carolina history classes, and I like felt so connected to the state, but also at times I was like, what were we doing? Excuse me. Bad decisions all around. So with all of these, I kind of had the opportunity to shape what I wanted to learn about politics and go from there. And then art history, I like to take um art history classes that kind of match with the political science classes I was taking. So if some were like, you know, modern and then US or North Carolina history from here on, or I took a US artist class, which was like my favorite. It was shockingly my favorite because, people think of the greats, the Renaissance, etc. But I took that at a time I was taking a US politics class around the same time frame. So it was almost like I could bring one curriculum into the other, and I felt like I was a more well-rounded learner. So don't be afraid to take those classes. Political science was great. If I were to do it again, I would probably do the same thing. I learned how to write. I learned how to communicate in both of those, and that has been super helpful in everything I do.
Those like intangible skills, those skills you're like learning in the meta way, right? That they're like you're not taking a class on writing, but you're going to get a lot of writing experience, and that will
Like,
serve you well in most careers, I'm sure.
you will
Yeah,
fill a blue book or two in political science.
there you go. Yes. Um, Yeah, that is, I love how you mentioned the synthesis of classes too, like how your coursework can actually talk to one another. And I feel like that's something that's neat about our youth and government program as well, is like you can learn a lot from like staying involved with the press team, even if you're not on in media, right?
Yep.
Or if, I mean, as Mita, like mock trial is something that I feel like so many people are so interested in, and they maybe know a little bit about it, but judicial has traditionally been like, or historically, I should say, our smaller like
Yep.
program, right?
Mhm.
And yet this year we've had like record numbers of students, wanting to join
Love
mock
it.
trial, and so I think
It's
it's,
insane.
yeah, and I mean super hard, right? But
Yeah.
a good problem to have, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well, then yeah, go ahead.
I do have one thing I want to mention after returning to the conference this year and everything. I realized how important it is to be active in your community because
Mm.
everything happens at a grassroots level. Um, I'm a part of two different groups within Albemarle County. Both are tied to the public schools because I have a vested interest. I have a first grader, and I will have a kindergartner there next year. I'm fortunate to have my kids in a good school, but it's also a Title I school, so I'm learning a lot about different gap groups where it's uh, equity financially, also diversity in many other ways. And I'm on two groups, one of which is the Family Council, which is an advocacy group, and we are advocating for our students. I advocate for my school. And with that, I have to get a lot of information from people who don't look like me or don't have my experience. So I've had the opportunity to do that. And then another is we have a redistricting committee where we are making a recommendation to the school board about our northern feeder pattern and how we can do that. And we had a meeting yesterday, it got very tense, and I was not part of the tense thing. I just listened. And then I was like, okay, we got to make some decisions here because I'm getting antsy. And I feel like remembering back to my time at youth and government, I could be like, hey, this is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that these scenarios work and maybe we could like kind of vote them forward, at least move forward. I was like, and I'm hearing that none of these scenarios are perfect, but if we combine two of them in some way, shape, or form, we could come to this conclusion we're looking for. And it was like an out of body experience. I was like, oh, I'm back. um, but having the opportunity to do that and also trying to take the time to step back and listen to what others are saying is super important to me. And it was really great to remember that. And I really think going back earlier this year was one of the things that drove me to be like, yeah, I need to do more. I need to be more active. I need to be more there. I cannot hold office. It's just a lot of stress, but having the opportunity to hear my voice, have my voice heard, like our superintendent knows who I am. And I'm going to be honest with you. The Winston-Salem Forsyth County superintendent we had, I don't even remember his name. Could not have picked him out of a lineup. So, it's a different way of doing it. But as an adult, I'm finding I need to do this more. I need to tap into those skills that I honed so long ago.
That's so
Yeah.
fun. Mhm.
Yeah, I really liked your emphasis on like even though you use some of those like soft skills you had in YAG and like your current like workplace, how you still use like the more like hard skills you've learned, like how to like diffuse a situation, how to find a solution instead of, continuing to argue over something that's probably not going to get solved
Oh,
into
it
different
was bad.
aspects of your life.
It was bad.
So many valuable
Into,
lessons. Yeah.
yeah, into like different aspects of your life and things like, like you're not in youth and government anymore, but you're still finding ways to like let your voice be heard. And I think that's really valuable for people who maybe aren't into like fields that allow them for their voices to be heard, but like there's still opportunities for people to do that.
It's important.
Yeah.
We don't want people who are uninformed making decisions. Like we had someone run for our school board here who had her kids in private schools, which having your children in private schools, wonderful. Do what you need to, but like, why do you need, like, if you're making that choice, what sense does it make for you to run for a public school board? Like, where are we here? So making sure that doesn't happen to where that's one of the two candidates on the docket and talking through those things. Not saying that they don't have the ability to have a voice, but I would like to have someone who has the experience in the public schools or something along those lines. So mine is mostly school focused right now, but my life is mostly school focused, as you can see by this reading nook. So
That's great. While we're thinking about lessons that you've learned, I mean, there's so many that you've offered us already. But one of the things that we've really enjoyed asking alums about is this idea of failure. It's something that I don't think we talk enough about just as a society, but also for students and for people who are growing and learning, which is to say all of us, right? So I'm curious if you could tell us about like a time that something like didn't go your way or an experience of failure that you've had to like work through and just what was that like for you, whether or not you want to share the experience is totally up to you, but just like
yeah,
what about that is something that you still hold with you today?
I'm comfortable with failure. In my career right now, sometimes failure is we're really hyped about a candidate and they don't accept our offer. And I'm like, what could I have done? I do a lot of self-reflection. I'm a parent. There are days I fail to get my child in the right coat because they cannot find it. And and I think, how could I have handled this in a gentler, nicer way? Um, there are times where I have been passed up for a promotion and have felt like a failure. At my last job, part of the reason I left is I was, I'm not going to say heir apparent because that sounds crazy, but I was the logical next person. I had been on my team the longest. I knew our programs inside and out, and I thought that I had the requisite experience to get the job. I did not get it. I was There are other stories that are for another time and I'm happy to talk about with anyone, but um I was upset. I was very upset, especially since, one of the final candidates had less experience than me. And I was told the reason is I didn't have enough experience and so on and so forth. But, it also helped me with growth because if I had gotten that job, I would have kind of been locked in a cycle or in a group or in an area where there was no growth. I realized I did not have growth where I was, and as much as I loved that, um, it was time for me to challenge myself a little bit more um, work wise. And I've learned a lot in government contracting. There are so many acronyms, like so many. Um, but you know, I've also learned that there are ways that I am stronger than I thought I was, and you know yes, I gave it a try having a new boss going from there, and he was fine, but it was time for me to move on, and that was very apparent. So, um, not getting that job it felt like a very big blow, but in some ways, good things have happened from it. And I made a very core group of friends at my last job that we still have we still we still have a text group called UVA expats because we all left, and we talk on it, and I've kind of made some core connections there that I would be very upset to not have. So now that I've had space and time, I've had time to reflect that though that's what I wanted then, that's not what I needed. And with failure, I have to remind myself it's temporary. I have to remind myself that this wasn't meant to be. That, I don't, some people are like, everything happens for a reason. I believe that to a point. I have my reasons. I can talk about that later too. But I do believe that, sometimes what you most hope for is not the right thing for you. And sometimes life has a way of showing you that. And kind of remembering that, we're all on a path. But also for me, that was a chance for me to step back and be like, work is not my life. I am much more outside of these 42 plus hours, that I'm working. And yes, things are important to me, but like my family and my wellness and everything are more important. So
Yeah. Thanks for that. It's I love how you're able to give us so many different examples in like your life, right? Because I think not to say that it's like, oh, I'm failing all the time, but like just that it like failure can be small failure, I mean, and it can be big too, but like the lessons are almost like the same, right? Like
yes.
the experience of it is like moving past it and figuring out like what is for you.
And the mourning period is different from the code situation with my child to not getting a job that I really had my heart set on. But
Sure.
it's something everything is comprised of incidents, or not, I wouldn't say just failures, but like things to move past. So you see the silver lining, and I make a lot of jokes. So that's how I cope with everything. It may not be healthy, but I'm cool with it.
Awesome. Oh man. Well, this has been such a treat. Our last round of questions is a special round. It's something that every guest on the YAGcast is answering. And these questions are actually developed by our officer team. So while we've got
That's awesome.
one of our student officers here with us, they have all had some, visibility and insight into what we want to hear from our alums. So I'm going to let Esmita ask you this sort of our roundup questions to close us out here.
All right. So just as like a fun icebreaker game, a lot of us tend to do this or that, which is when everybody stands up, moves to one side of the room or the other. So fun. Everybody loves to move. Even though we can't exactly get up or move, but
I'll just do this. You ready?
this or that, Friday fun night or governor's gala.
I would say Governor's Gala because Friday Fun Night, when we did it, was very different than your Friday Fun Night, which is better. So if I were to do it as of now, I would say Friday Fun Night. If I were to do it in the aughts, I would say Governor's Gala.
What is your favorite or most impactful book you've read?
So my favorite book of all time has remained the same since I was like 16, and that's Little Women. I think it's just a very great book. It makes me laugh, it makes me cry, it shocks me, every time. It's way better than the original movie, which was still a banger, like very good movie. Um, but most recently, I think the most impactful for my text group with my book club would be Fourth Wing, which is very good.
I've definitely been hearing things about Fourth Wing. I might have to
It's
look into
really
it soon.
good. It's very long. And I have
Hmm.
not finished Iron Flame yet, and I'm scared too because I know there's a big old cliffhanger, and I'm not about that right now. Mentally not ready.
Always frustrating. Finally, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt if you had the chance?
I want to be a librarian half the time. I love to read. I love to read pretty much everything. I once accidentally bought an Audible book about Ulysses S. Grant and listened to the whole thing. I know a lot about him if you have questions. The S stands for nothing. So um that was really interesting. And it was even more interesting because he has moved up in the presidential ratings higher than anyone else uh, over time, because the more that was learned about him as being a quartermaster in the Civil War, and that's the reason that, I could go on. It's fine. It was very interesting. Would I listen to it again? Absolutely not. But do I know enough? I like kind of those surprises. So I think I would be a librarian. Probably a public librarian. I don't know if I could do elementary school. It would be fun, but it would be a lot.
Yeah.
Ah, Lizzie, thank you so much for this conversation. This has been just so wide ranging, and just, I mean, your sense of just your personality and your sense of humor is just such a gift. And so I am really grateful that we have sort of reconnected,
It's
through
been
this, I
wonderful.
mean, alumni, engagement opportunities in the conference, and just thanks for sharing all of these stories with us today.